Well, welcome back to the third session we had today of Power of Life linked data to transform, and we're going to hear first from Jos, who's going to just briefly present the slides he's made available on the political group information system use case that he's conceived of. So over to you, Jos.
Yeah, thanks, Agnes. So this slide I already showed you, and this was the infamous slide that didn't show anything before. And now we see it has a lovely graphic which comes straight from a template. And these are what I thought would be the requirements for a political group information system. And if you read them, you can see that they're actually very generic for any type of group that wants to say things about files. So very important for us is that we have an archive. We should be able to find back all the old files, when they were added to the system, what agenda they were on, and what comments they were on previously. We want the data to be secure in the sense that it doesn't change without us knowing. Most of the people in these political parties are familiar with working with folders with files in them, and if it changes, add a number to the end, or just look at the date, and that's obviously very insecure. And as developers, we know that in a system like Git, it's much easier to track.
What does CAS mean, CAS?
CAS means Content-Addressable Storage.
Okay.
And that stands for that if you want to save a file, you calculate a hash of contents.
Okay.
And that hash is practically unique for that file. So you can use it as the ID. If I want to share a file with you, I can send you the hash of the file. Then you can look it up anywhere and then see, oh, this file has the same hash. That means that's the file that Jos was talking about. And that means it's independent of servers, it's independent of domain names or any type of thing. And the IPFS, for example, Interplanetary File System, is based on this. And also the source control system Git is based on this concept. And it's a very easy way of talking about files unambiguously. So I want to talk about exactly this version of a PDF. If you use the CAS, then you can find it and you can be sure that you're talking about exactly the same thing. I want everything to be possibly also local, so that the server of the central political system doesn't know at what time I'm looking at which files. This is a bit paranoid for the Netherlands situation, but I just want to make sure that I can have the files locally and back them up locally so that I'm in power with my data. It should be append only for this case, so we don't overwrite things, we just add more data. Now, practically, a few times a week, there's a bunch of documents published by the municipality, and that we add those to the system, and then somebody says which members will do which documents, just has a quick look at them and divides them over the people. The first step of adding data is adding documents. The second step is assigning, making statements about who will be working on what. That will be some sort of coordinator. And then the members will add tags and links and annotations to these documents. Now, the documents are organized by agenda. So an agenda is just a date at which a meeting will take place and the list of agenda items with documents attached to them. So it's not very important how exactly this is organized, but this is a simple model that is used in political meetings. Yeah, there are different types of meetings, so political meetings and group meetings, but this distinction is not really that important. And the political group that wants this is 100% in favor of using free software, so that's also a requirement.
Can I ask about tags and links and annotations?
Yeah.
Do they form part of the document, or are they separate to the document?
They are separate to documents. Yeah, outside of it. So we're not changing if a PDF comes in and we add annotations to it. Those do not modify the PDF.
Okay. Are they subject to the same effectively content address? So should I be able to find the version of the document or rather the version of the annotations?
Yes.
Other annotations, other hash, other identity.
Yes, exactly. Every object, when it's changed by adding more triples to it, the address changes, but you'll be able to find back the previous version of it by adding a triple saying this comment is a modified version of that comment.
Now you can also find like later versions.
That's more difficult.
No, you can't look forward. No.
But I think that would be
I
essential
mean,
for it to work.
once you've stored it and you have a comment of last week, you can say between then and now, a comment follow on that.
I guess that, but for it to really work,
yeah,
that's an essential use case that you can go through what comes afterwards.
Yeah. So I guess the way you could do that, so I'm jumping into implementation now, is that you could then add a triple to the previous version, which is a pointer to the newer version, as well as the battery if you just start.
But then the hash would change because you added the triple. So I think the only way to resolve this is to actually add like a query endpoint for constructing versions or finding incoming references to previous commits, things like that. This is definitely doable. I actually implemented this some time ago. It definitely can work, but it's not trivial from data structure itself.
I like that this discussion is being sparked because of this comment. So when we later go into the technology, it's a thing to bring up again. I think that would be interesting.
I have one more, I think, a requirement, because we did open source forming, and one thing we noticed that sometimes there were takedown requests. So we implemented an append-only log for the system.
Yeah.
And then these guys were like, yeah, we're going to take down this document because it contains privacy sensitive data. And we're like, yeah, it's open data, it's already out there.
Yeah.
You still have to take it down. Okay. And then so you maybe also need a way to remove append-only things.
Yes. So there should be a list of hashes that are not allowed to be redistributed anymore.
Can discuss this in a session about how to change the immutable data.
Yeah, that's slightly challenging from a GDPR perspective, because you need to be able to demonstrate.
But this problem has been solved in practice, because in Git, this is also just a Merkle tree.
But this would result in like a Streisand effect to the max, right? I mean, you'd have like a list of don't store these. These are secrets. These contain very sensitive data. Don't you store these things?
That's true.
Yeah, like MS servers.
Yeah, but you comply with the request. But the Streisand effect, yeah, that's true. Some people will take joy in finding all the forbidden materials and storing only those. Yeah.
They download everything, and as soon as there's something taken off,
there is a potential fix for that. Everybody implements the IPFS system in such a way that if you find a forbidden entity on a server, you kick them out of the network. So you just ignore them on the server.
Oh, nice.
you just go under in the dark web.
And then the Chinese government says you should not look at this specific hash, and then everybody ignores that.
I can read this from the blog post. Reintroducing censorship on content-addressable storage.
Okay. Yeah.
It would also be a great way to take down the system by looking what are the most frequent hashes and forbid those. For example, the one for an anti-fire. Yeah. Anyway.
Please take down this empty file.
Okay, this is already the last slide where I split up the requirements a bit in things, and I put some concreteness in there to avoid discussions on particular tastes, perhaps. So the data model, I think there should be a schema. So I just chose the popular ones at the moment, SHACL, because it seems to be the one that Link Data is using most, the solid world is using most, and a JSON schema as a backup system for simpler software that doesn't support the full SHACL. Versioning is basically implied by having the write-only log, so you can always look back. So versioning should come out automatically of the design. Storage, the big files just go in a content-addressable system, and every change to the system is signed by the person doing the change and added to the set of files. So the API is secondary to the data model. It's just a way of writing to the storage. Basically, the storage is the most important thing, in my opinion. And then how to get to that, of course, should be easy, should be nice, but I'm not optimizing for the API, but for the storage, because to me, that feels more real. That's the actual files. So I also made a choice already, send data as JSON LD, just to avoid a lot of discussions. So there are no logins in the API, but you just check that the incoming message is signed by somebody who has permissions to add stuff, and that's a statement which is already present in the system. So that's a great way, my opinion, to avoid having to use logins, and you can store your secrets any way you like in a safe way, and then create signed messages, which you then send. And I'm sure security experts will now hammer me for saying this is a very stupid idea, but you know, we can discuss this.
But that was not what I was going to say. I was going to ask that can those be revoked then?
Of course, anybody
over time.
But the identities?
No, the permissions. So
Right,
I give you write access, and you start writing, and then I revoke your write access. You're still writing, and then mess it up. I know that your rights were revoked
Because you're running on private.
That's a requirement I didn't write down, but which is in there, and you have to find a way to solve it.
So I have a question around where live data requirements might actually fit into this. So we're talking primarily about documentary data here.
Yeah.
Is there a need that you envisage in this situation for multiple people to be editing the same information at the same time, whether that be information about the files stored in there or the files themselves?
So the point where the live part comes in is in you have a head, because I'm a developer, I think in Git layout.
Yeah.
And multiple people might be wanting to commit to the head at the same time, right? So the message that's coming in should refer to the latest head that they are building on. And then if the head has changed since then there's a conflict.
Okay.
That might be one way of resolving it. And then coming up with a channel where you can find where the heads are. Maybe that's a bit reductive to talk about live systems. So if we can add more requirements to make it more lively, that one might be good. But you're right, this was not a thing that really a lot of live things happening together or feeding a live data stream, mixing that in with this is not something that currently is in the requirements.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to explore that as a starting.
Yeah, maybe we should add that in because obviously this is a large part of today.
One idea that comes to mind in this context is going to be a lot of people collaborating on policy documents, as you might expect for a political organization, or their manifesto for an upcoming election. That would be a way of handling that. There may well be other materials or other content that they actually collaborate on. This system here is currently acting as a content management system for that, but it also actually being able to do more than just what is essentially metadata management and manage the collaboration that goes into actually creating and maintaining these documents. And there's also a discussion to be had about how transparent the collaboration process is to create the content. It needs to be for people outside because they're a political party or for people participating in the process. I mean, do you want to see absolutely every edit historically that was made to a document, or do you want to see all the chats that actually went on in the background discussing what should actually go into a paragraph, or do you want to just more present the published version, the interim editing in from view? Okay.
I think we are getting very deep into the discussion.
Thank you. Yeah,
and there's not that much time left.
You're right. I've fallen into my own trap. I'm supposed to be the person stopping that from happening. Yeah, I appreciate your flagging that too. Anything else you wanted to add to what you said today? Yeah, yes.
No, I think these are the ideas I had for this system. Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to say I'd love to help develop this. I think I have some starting points for actually achieving this, a bit of experience with the open slide forming domain. And I think like a lot of these things are actually already functional. So I'm really looking forward to maybe doing this in a later session on hackathon. Like it will take an entire day to build something like this in a very minimal way, I think still. But in the workshop we can dive into maybe a start for this.
Yeah. So I think if we're talking about all these topics, obviously we can't implement this today, but it might be a way to define the work packages, what you would be writing and how you would be using those technologies to do it.
Yeah.
That might be a way to learn about these topics.
So how big are the documents and how many are there and how many users?
So this is a small municipality. I have the history of all the documents from 2013 to now, and those are 11,000 PDFs.
Are those including the history? So including every version of those documents?
No, I can't see when they changed them. So
okay.
yeah, so the system that I get them from, I only see the latest version. And this is also one of the reasons why we want our own system, because we can't see what was changed. Right?
Okay, so how many versions would you expect?
Per file, I would expect maybe 5 versions, not a lot.
5 published versions.
Yeah, exactly. These are documents that are published by the municipality and then discussed by the political group.
I'd expect only one blood point something.
Mostly it's one. Mostly it's one.
We had some history with this kind of system. I think that most of the documents are indeed one. There are a few documents that are always at least 2, because they have a signed version and an unsigned version.
Oh, yeah.
And then there is the agenda, which if you put that as a document as well, that's going to change a lot.
Yeah, that's a highly mutable thing.
But I was thinking the agenda would be a set of triples.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But still immutable.
Yes, and version. Yeah, exactly.
By agenda, we mean as in calendar?
Yeah. So what are we discussing in this meeting? It's not the calendar. No.
Meeting minutes.
No, the calendar is implied by having all the dates of the meetings.
Well, I suppose that we then go into our separate groups and discuss the topics that we've chosen, but with this use case in mind, because it gives us a focus for that.
Would it be an idea to say that editing the agenda is a live thing, because that's a very simple data model. Agenda items, order of the items, and attached documents.
Yeah.
We've just seen how simple it is. You just merge a few things and you copy them twice and then you out what the numbering was.
Yeah, that would make quite a well scoped use case.
Actually, I've seen a design for such a meeting system over here. So there's a lot of live things going on because you have to keep track of the time. Like, what's the next agenda item? You've got live
We
comments
are going to
coming
do that
in.
in the subgroups, I think.
Yeah.
In Joop, we have to get together because we built such a system years ago.
Cool.
And I just looked at it, it's still kind of running, but it's nowhere near linked data or anything like that.
So there are two groups. What can I choose from?
Right, let's go back to our attendee site. I shall stop the recording this for a moment.